This is Greg Troutwine with Maritime Reporter TV, and we're very pleased to be joined again by Xeneta's Chief Analyst, Peter Sand, to discuss the ever-changing landscape in the container shipping sector. Peter, as we wind down 2023 and look to 2024, there are some familiar problems, namely the continued issues at the Panama Canal. And I know that you are all about the numbers, but one that really struck out to me recently was 3,975,100 as in dollars that was paid to jump the line at the Panama Canal. What's going on at the Panama Canal, and what does the picture look like as we roll into 2024?
Yeah, sure thing. It's a whooping ticket price to jump the line and get through the narrow choke point of the Panama Canal, with the price tag right now etching in on $4 million USD. I recall a number of months back during one of the early earning calls by a major gas carrier. I think rumors around 2.4 million at that point in time were discussed. Now it seems as if I cannot say it's the normal price tag, but it's beginning to look like that. Last week we had these almost 4 million, and later this week we have another two ticket prices of 4 million USD paid for jumping the line. But what's happening on, I think, 29 October, basically the Panama Canal Authority finally got their act together. Basically, what we all knew in essence was about to be a troublesome half year, full year ahead, but they basically put it into a more planning for everyone to get their head around a massive cut in capacity and transit through the Panama Canal from around 32 at that point in time down to 18 transits, and that goes both north-south and south-north when we come to February. So it's crunch time also for container shipping, but more so perhaps even for the tramp carriers that cannot plan ahead to that say that much ahead, and maybe even priced out also if they wanted to, because well the load or the price of their cargo load may be dwarfed by a price tag like this. So to me, this is rumoring perhaps rerouting, perhaps shippers, freight forwarders, or carriers also in container shipping. They need to plan ahead to manage this risk, because not only the ships that transit are lightly loaded, but they are also fewer in number. So you really need not only to get your head around this, but certainly also perhaps to get your ship around that. And if you're shipping into to US Gulf Coast, for instance, you can certainly see on the Xeneta platform right now that the spot rates basically ticked up in the days after, and have been doing so in 20 days now into the U.S. Gulf Coast, as that is particularly those ports that are hurt the most by something like this. So interesting days, and I think I call this a slow burning disaster. But at least now we have a little bit more tangible insights from the Panama Canal authorities to plan ahead until February, and I think also onwards. I expect this to be haunting the industry for another year.
Peter, rates have obviously been in the spotlight and largely under pressure for the balance of 2023. And I noted earlier this month a jump in the spot rates, particularly on the Far East to the U.S. West Coast and U.S. East Coast routes. Quite simply, have these rate increases held, and what is your projection heading into 2024?
Often when we look at rates and we look at general rate increases, we tend to see some sort of similar development on the main hauls. That means Far East into North America in general, and also Far East to North Europe. But there is no such thing as a normal market these days. No two trades are alike. And even if we look at Far East into the US West Coast and East Coast, they are quite differently developing during this year, 2023. I mean, if you look at spot rates into the US East Coast, they are approximately at half where they were entering the year. But we can see that the GRI implemented by the carrier somewhat successfully in the early days of November is actually sticking pretty fixed. So we have seen a flat line for rates into to North America around $2,500, give or take. It's much different if you look at the U.S. West Coast, for instance, because in that part of the region you have spot rates that is approximately 25% higher today than when entering the year. But you're also seeing that the say partly successfully implemented GRIs in early days of November are really sliding. They are not all neutralized as we speak here on 20 November. I mean, we are approximately say 60% down on what was implemented in the early days of November. So we're around 1,900 right now on that trade lane. So obviously, I mean, also when you compare the spread between the two, East Coast and West Coast, you often have a rule of thumb around $1,000. I mean, you and I go back quite some time. You can see that from the color of our hairs, right? So we know that a rule of thumb, $1,000, $1,050. That gap is very narrow now. It's down to 600, and I think the U.S. West Coast shippers are actually paying a higher price, even though that's where we see rates sliding right now. But I mean, this is where the heat will be on also, as a lot of the goods transported from Far East into U.S. East Coast is going through the Panama Canal, and that cannot be the case for the coming half year at least. You'll get to see goods rerouted via Suez, in particular, some also getting into the U.S. West Coast and then trucking or railing onwards, and that may be a part of the reason for the premium you're paying in the U.S. West Coast right now. But it's definitely trades to watch for as we go into next year also.
But rates and volumes often go hand in hand. And if I'm reading correctly, you've seen global volumes continue to recover as the days of 2023 start to wind down. Can you put a little meat on the bone to this trend? And by that, I mean, where do you see the uptick in volume specifically, and what's your outlook for 2024?
Our outlook for 2024 is positive volume growth when compared to the full year of 2023. And we may get to something like a neutral development in 2023, because we are actually facing the best month in the past 5 years. When we look at CTS data from September, it's the first time it's ever been above 15 million TEUs moved in September. So we're getting into those final months where basically everything collapsed last year, and where we are expecting somewhat of a higher level this year. So a little bit of, say, mechanical behind this, but also still we are forecasting a slightly decline in volumes this year. But the connectivity, of course, is where it all looks strange on paper. If you look at North America, volumes are down. No doubt about that. But we see a huge uptake in other destinations, Indian subcontinent, South America, East Coast. We also see even sub-Saharan Africa, a place where we hardly ever put focus, because that's not a keen or huge focus area. Volumes are not that big. They're not that volatile. But then again, all of a sudden we see Chinese exporters finding new markets for their produce. So coming into 2024, I forecast that we will see more seasonality, more normal seasonality coming back, and all because of also that the main importing regions will some sort of come back as they recover, not only from COVID, but certainly also from the massive negative impact from inflation, high interest rates that have haunted us in 2023, mostly the household owners, the consumers in North Europe and North America. So coming into 2024, I think we will see somewhat of a recovery in terms of those classical main trades. Whether it'll be at the expense of those that stepped in during 2023 to keep high Far Eastern exports that are actually at record high right now also, I cannot say for sure. But I think, I mean, when something goes up by 15, 16%, 20% also to some of those direct say destinations, probably we will see some sort of negative development on those trades next year, and we will see again growth on North America for sure. Hopefully also North Europe, and not only in the Mediterranean. Mediterranean. So a lot of factors come into force, and of course we will see the proof in the pudding, not only in the hairline, in the freight rates, because that's where you always find the answer between supply and demand, and where capacity is managed to a smarter level than on other trade by the carriers. So all shippers should watch out for the carriers' behavior and how they can make use of that intelligence in order to cut the best deals for them on their say main trades.
Okay, well, Peter, as they say, if it was simple, everyone would do it. So with so many different factors, I'm sure that's what Xeneta counts on to provide to its clients, its insights. So, in your estimation, what are the top 3 or 4 trends to watch in the container shipping sector in 2024?
At first, I think we will need to watch the development of inflation in the key consuming areas, North Europe and North America, because that will give you an idea of how strong are the consumers. You also need to watch on that regard the deflation in China, because that's basically also say benefiting shipping, benefiting the consumers as they can import relatively cheaper goods. That is, so that's one trend to watch out for, the inflation. Obviously, also when we're looking at 2024, as we did when we looked at 2023, the capacity situation in the market is one that should worry carriers, because they are once again injecting a record high number of new ships with a lot of new capacity into global trade lanes in 2024. And that stacks on top of the overcapacity already built from nominal capacity inflow in 2023, on top of you can say, all the tonnage that was then released back into the market following the easing of congestions. So that's another factor to watch out for. And I think also, I mean, we did already touch extensively on 2024 in this interview. So allow me just to bring one thing to your mind, and also because we're just about to issue an insightful paper on that from Xeneta, EU ETS, the inclusion of shipping into the European emission trading scheme. That is definitely something that everybody needs to look out for, because carriers are doing it differently, and we're seeing a gradual phasing in. So at first it may not be that much of a pain point for shippers or carriers, but as the years progress, it will not be such more a surcharge or a fee that the carriers will ask for in order to compensate for the ETS, what's it called, when they have to pay for their emissions later down the road. So there's regulation also to watch out for when coming into 2023. And as always, I mean, regulation gives you guidance also into where rates will be at some point in time, because many of those surcharges and many of those regulatory factors, forwarders, carriers, anyone will try to pass on those costs, and of course shippers will argue against that, saying, hey, we decarbonize our own supply chains, you decarbonize yours at your cost, and at the end of the day, I mean, they all need supply chains to work. So those factors, I will personally look very much forward to following once we get to 2024, and of course also looking forward to keep the discussion going with you on this channel, Greg.
Okay, well, Peter, as always, I appreciate your time. Great to speak with you.
My pleasure.